I am Nick Shell, and I have returned to feed your late night hair loss craving talk stuff. Let's talk about Ashton Kutcher. A few weeks ago on Conan, he admitted that at age 25 he started using Avodart. He used it for 10 years, so from basically age 25 to 35, he's 40 now, he was using this drug to stop any further hair loss. And he admitted he stopped using it when he wanted to start having kids. So that confirms what I already knew. I remember when I was in college, I actually, because if Ashton Kutcher's 40, then I'm 37, so he's 3 years older than me. I remember in college noticing as he was wrapping up that 70s show, I noticed he got a haircut from his long hair that he used to have on the show. And I thought, hey, I can tell his hairline's going up. I bet I will always have a hairline, a hair loss situation similar to Ashton Kutcher, because again, in college, me being 3 years younger than him, I could see a lot of similarities there. But that's interesting. So now that he's stopped using it at 5 years ago, and he reveals his hair, it looks, I don't know, with my hairline being the way it was, it looks like he's got no diffuse thinning, but it goes back always. He might be a strong Norwood too, maybe. But either way, once you stop using a drug like that, then the loss begins. And it's like, well, does your body start catching up to where it would be in real time to some degree? It makes me wonder. But he was very confident in saying that he's not afraid to go bald. He's off the drugs now, and he's just going to let it happen. And I think a lot of people who've been watching this video are like, they would say the same thing about that as they would to me. They're like, well, Nick, you're 37, you're married, you got 2 kids. It makes sense why you're not worried about losing your hair. When you're that far in life, that's a lot different than someone who's in their early 20s and, doesn't even have a girlfriend or whatever, So I can understand where you're coming from on that for sure. It's easier for a guy pushing 40 like me, or a guy who is already 40, to not care about it at that point. But it is interesting. I mean, it's like, even with me doing all these videos, I've learned how many actors were either on some kind of drug like that or had a hair transplant, and realizing how normal it is. I mean, Bradley Cooper and Matthew McConaughey with their hair transplants. Like, I never would have known about that. So it is interesting because I had always expected I can look at Ashton Kutcher to find out where I might be, because I just knew when we were about the same age back in the early 2000s that his hairline seemed to match mine back then. So it is really interesting. Of course, I use rosemary oil. I've been using that for a year and a half now, so that makes me, is there any chance that possibly, if that's working, that it's slowed down? Of course, we'll know more when my hair grows out, but it's still showing the diffuse thinning up here, so we'll see how that goes. But it is interesting, that made, that's like a trending video with Ashton Kutcher admitting this, because what actors actually admit that, it's a pretty interesting and somewhat unique revelation that Ashton Kutcher used Avodart for a decade, 25 to age 35, but then he stopped using it because he wanted to have kids, which for me, that's always been one. I'd have to care enough about losing my hair to even use something like that, but even if I did care enough, it's a matter of that being related to preventing you from having kids, or even the chance of it, a small chance of it. That's pretty revealing and pretty telling that he was aware of that the whole time and thought, okay, of course, at age 35, I guess, even if you can make it that far without losing your hair, and you're an actor in Hollywood, but it's like, well, what is he really acting in anymore? He seems like stuff he's doing is more behind the camera, and he's Ashton Kutcher. What does that matter? He's 40, married, kids. But yeah, he admitted that, and that's interesting. That is interesting. For a decade, he was holding onto his hair, but now he's made peace with it, and he's ready to let whatever's going to happen. So, what are your thoughts on that? I'm Nick Shell. This is a channel for people who are obsessed with not so much hair loss, but talking about hair loss. This is an outlet for that.